when all of the world is asleep. You take in the blackness of air, the lakes of a darkness so deep that God at the start couldn't bear. But still the mind, rejecting this new empty space, fills it with something or someone. No closer could I be to God, or why He would do what He's done.
Andrew Hosier Byrne. Where do I begin? Activist, musician, Jesus impersonator, professional yearner. Born March 17th, 1990, go Pisces. Andrew Hosier Byrne has been blessing the world with his music since 2013 with his first debut single, Take Me to Church. Imagine hitting it out of the park that fast. Hosier's music is obviously influenced by his Catholic upbringing and Irish heritage, but I think that this TikTok perfectly describes what his music is.
Do you know petrichor, the smell after it rains? I'd like for this song to sound exactly like that smell. I think for this next one we should do a big angelic build-up with a choir and lots of harmonies, and you'll hear your mam's voice for the first time again. And then we'll infuse the frequencies with the elixir of infinite sorrow. Picture a field of daisies, and when the wind blows through, it creates soul music, right? But the daisies also revolted against their government as well. That's what I want the next one to sound like. For this next one, I'd like it to feel like you're perpetually falling in slow motion off the cliffs of Moher. I'd like for the last 30 seconds of this one to sound like you've just woken up from spending an entire lifetime as an oak tree.
There also was this time I was playing Elden Ring and I was running through a swamp. It was misty, the sun was rising, everything was red, and then I heard this beautiful voice just singing to me in the fog. And then I followed the voice until I found this thing and was killed immediately. That's Hosier. While most singer-songwriters feel like they need to barf up a single every year in order to stay relevant, Andrew instead decides to emerge every few years from the mystical bog that he happens to live in and bless us with the most immaculate, beautiful, heartbreaking sounding album to ever grace our ears, that perfectly encapsulates the desire, lust, and romance felt only between two immortal beings that are only able to see each other every other century. And we all say thank you, thank you, thank you, Andrew, thank you. And we all did say thank you when Andrew came out of the mystical bog that I mentioned previously. After the horrendous 2 years that was the COVID-19 pandemic, Hosier released what has become one of my favorite albums in the last 10 years, Unreal Unearth. And surprise, 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 it's a concept album. Your girl likes concept albums. Andrew has taken his love of classical literature to the next level, because Unreal Unearth shows a man's slow journey into the lowest point in the universe. Yes, Unreal Unearth is about Dante's Inferno. For those of you who didn't pay attention in English, Dante's Inferno is a poem from 1321, which is before now. Dante Alighieri, the writer of the poem, is chosen to bear witness to the afterlife and is led by the famous poet Virgil through hell, which is Inferno, purgatory, which is Purgatorio, and heaven, Paradisio? But no one ever cares about Purgatorio or Paradiso, because that's not where the cool stuff comes from. That's not where the horror comes from. Horror comes from Inferno. Besides the Odyssey or Gilgamesh or Beowulf, there is really no other story that has influenced Western storytelling more than Inferno. From other novels to music to video games to freaking children's programming, literally Inferno's influence is in everything. And that is so freaking funny to me, because Dante's Inferno is quite possibly the oldest example of fan fiction. Because let me describe it to you. So the poet himself who wrote Inferno has the protagonist of his story be himself, a self-insert protagonist who is led by his favorite poet through hell. All the while he's meeting all these historical figures and these other artists, these other poets who sit there and talk about how great he is. Literally, Dante is the first ever self-insert Mary Sue. Anyways, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the damn album. Because while Unreal Unearth is not necessarily a one-to-one comparison with Dante's Inferno, it is very, very heavily influenced by it in its storytelling. And while Andrew himself has said that Unreal Unearth is not necessarily a narrative album, it doesn't have an overall story, him being him, which is a storyteller, which is an artist, he has actually accidentally created a narrative within Unreal Unearth. And that's what I'm going to tell you about today. Today we are going to talk about the protagonist's journey in Unreal Unearth through his own version of hell, through his memories of heartbreak, betrayal, and lost love.
Midway through the journey of my life, I found myself lost in a dark forest, having wandered off the main path. It is hard for me to express in words how savage, rough, and stern this forest was to me. The very thought of it renews my fear. It was so bitter that death could not be worse. But in order to show you the good that I eventually found, I must first tell you of the other things I saw.
So De Selby is a character from a book called The Third Policeman. He also features in the Dalkey Archives, but really I'm kind of referencing The Third Policeman here, and those familiar with that book will kind of know why it's appropriate. The Third Policeman is kind of an Alice in Wonderland about a man who sort of finds his way on a bit of a journey himself and sort of is trying to make sense of this very strange and weird, wonderful experience. I won't say wonderful, it's kind of terrifying for him. De Selby is this philosopher, this kind of scholar who's kind of part genius, part lunatic. He sees the world through a very, very dream-like logic.
If you ever want to go on an acid trip in the form of literature, read The Third Policeman. Originally written in 1939 by Irish author Flann O'Brien, the novel actually wasn't published until 1967, a year after his death. It's the story of an unnamed protagonist's journey through a pseudo-limbo after his, spoiler alert, murder. Throughout the novel, he often refers to and takes guidance from a fictional philosopher named De Selby, who sort of acts as the protagonist's Virgil through his own personal hell.
At last, when all of the world is asleep, you take in the blackness of air, the lakes of a darkness so deep that God at the start couldn't bear.
In Inferno, that's going to get very difficult to say, Dante falls down the rabbit hole after falling asleep, entering this strange, dreamlike logic world of a forest, which is where our protagonist, who I will call Joe, as another reference to The Third Policeman, finds himself at the beginning of the album.
And sit unseen, with only the inner upheld. Your reflection can't offer a word to the bliss of not knowing yourself. With all mirroring gone from the world.
As a way to open the album, it's a song that just reflects upon darkness and the falling of night, let's say, and viewing that as something that's very freeing, in which all things are lost in that darkness. And that's kind of aligned with the thinking of De Selby. If I can't see where my hand begins and the darkness ends, they then become literally one and the same. So that's the kind of mindset that he would have. So it just seemed appropriate to sort of explore that theme of darkness as something that's very freeing, and the predicament of that is that when your mind is empty.
The protagonist of The Third Policeman does not remember his own name, or where he came from, or why he's here, or why he suddenly is fixated on finding a box. But our Joe instead wakes up in a state of bliss.
It's sort of a playful little reflection on creation, I suppose, and that's a state in that God found intolerable had to create the world. It sort of, there's a moment it transitions. There's a section in Irish, in Gaelic, where it sort of expands upon that thought in the direction of a love song.
Well, I started the Agus no snaithe trí na céile cléan cléan Well, I started the Agus no snaithe Is clé cléan alien Is salin dovi.
It's kind of, although you're bright and light, you are, you arrive to me like nightfall. You come like nightfall. You and I sort of mixed up together. Where you can't see where one begins and one ends, that is an actual metamorphosis of some kind. And then we move into De Selby Part 2.
What you're giving, what you living.
The music on this album is so beautiful, and the people that you worked with on this to help bring this to life, it's just so tasteful and wonderful. And like you said beautifully, like the light and the shade so wonderfully covered. The part 1 and part 2 that kick it all off is a perfect example of that. You're drawn into this very intimate, almost vicarious experience in part 1, and then it just kicks off into this kind of almost 1972, 1973, timeless, when everything was funky.
Yeah, true.
Like everything. That was what you're striving for, because it sounds that way.
There was, and we're blessed with, LA is such a fantastic place to get your hands on good old gear as well too. So like these excellent preamps. I remember writing those riffs in County Wicklow and trying to capture that. That's this sort of like John Hammer Group sort of feel of put some sort of like analog synth to lay down the rhythm, and then just have some nice guitar.
You just got to be suspending imposter syndrome the whole time doing that, because you don't have the preamps or the band or any of that.
Exactly.
So you just make it like, can I pull this off?
Yeah.
So again, it's like we're sort of lost together in this moment of veiled in darkness, and all of us are everything. There is no beginning and there is no end, and it just sort of explores that as, albeit in a kind of a sort of funky disco track.
The music video for Part 2 stars also super famous Irishman, Domhnall Gleeson. All we need is Colin Farrell, Cillian Murphy, and then boom, we have every great Irishman in the world. The video itself for De Selby Part 2 is an allegory about addiction, but it's also heavy on the inspiration from, you guessed it, The Third Policeman. Spoilers for a book that's older than all of you, I guarantee it. My YouTube demographics are correct. The protagonist of The Third Policeman is dead. It actually kind of alludes to that very, very quickly. He is dead because a year prior in the story, he was a part of a robbery/murder that he committed with his what he thought, friend. And then this sent him into a spiral of paranoia, of mistrusting his friend, until that exact friend just decided to take care of the problem. And how was this murder committed?
To be when you follow me like night every time, and I want to be so far from sane and mind. I wanna kill the lights.
There's also undertones of addiction or a vice putting you in a cycle that you can't shake. Waking up in the bar covered in dirt, the one putting you in the ground is the one who falls off the wagon. The fact that this happens. But the lyrics tell us a story of a love, a first meeting that was intoxicating to who I'm going to call, for the sake of theming, Beatrice. Sure, it was fun and wild at first, but this relationship will eventually lead into a spiral until he's literally standing at the gates of hell. And there's nowhere to go but down.
Through me the way is to the suffering city. Through me the way is to eternal pain. Through me the way among the people lost. It was justice that moved my Creator. Divine omnipotence created me, the highest wisdom and the primal love. Before me there were no created things, only eternity, and I too last eternal. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Down there, using only my ears to guide me, were not lamentations, but only sighs that filled the endless and everlasting air. These are the ones who have not sinned, and if they had merit, it was not enough, because they were not baptized, which is the gateway to heaven in the faith that you follow.
Wow, you can't see this one. That's fine. Dante in the poem describes the first layer of hell as fine. There's no torment, no torture, no cosmic horrors, no Greek mythology figures for some reason. In fact, it's almost indistinguishable from Earth. This circle is filled with all the non-Christians who were good people, but they just never heard of Jesus and didn't get baptized. Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. Sure, why not? And so they are cursed to be eternally bummed out about that. And in this song, our Joe enters the first circle of hell and immediately starts to reminisce about Beatrice. And he's going to be doing a lot of that, so strap in.
Remember once I told you about how before I heard it from your mouth, my name would always hit my ears as such an awful sound. And the soul, if that's what you call it, uneasy ally of the body, it felt nameless as a river undiscovered underground. And the first time that you kissed me, I drank dry the river Lethe. The Lethe would have been softer on my stomach all the same.
Lethe is the river that runs through the underworld in Greek mythology. Again, like I said before, Dante is going to make a lot of Greek mythology references. The Lethe was the river of forgetfulness. And then the Lethe is a river in Dublin, which is probably not the best water to drink from. So that just means this line is funny, this line is clever. It's good one, Andrew, this was funny. But it literally translates to, babe, you were a poison that made me forget.
First time that you called me baby, some part of me came alive. The first time that you called me baby.
And this nostalgia fades, as it always does. Joe remembers that even though it started out magical, it ended. All things end. Spoiler. And the serenity, the somewhat peace of limbo also has to end. And it's time we enter the second layer.
When When I was young, I used to guess, are there limits to any emptiness? When was the last time? Come here to me. When was the last time? Some part of me must have died. The final time you called me baby. But some part of me came alive. The final time you called me baby.
This hurricane that never rests hurtles the spirits onward in its forceful gale, whirling them round, beating and smashing them. I learned that this was the place of punishment for those who were condemned for their lust, who followed their personal passions instead of reason. So does that blast always propel these evil spirits. Left, right, downward, upward it drives them. They have no hope of comfort forever, nor of rest, sleep, or even of lesser pain.
So Francesca is from the Circle of Lust. It's kind of one of the more clear nods to the Inferno poem, and is a character in Canto 5, which is based on a real historical figure called Francesca de Rimini, and her lover Paolo. She was murdered by her husband. She was kind of married in a political marriage at a very young age to a much, much older man, and ended up falling in love with his younger brother. And her husband murdered them both.
Those condemned to the second circle of hell in Dante's Inferno committed the sin of lust, and they are condemned to be blown around by a mighty wind for all eternity. I mean, the text just says mighty winds, but let's just for the sake of everything, for theming, it's a hurricane. This starts a pattern in Dante's Inferno where Dante enters a circle of hell, meets a famous historical figure, a character from literature, or Greek mythology, because this is the Hades/hell tag on AO3. And Joe, like Dante, encounters the same two famous adulterers in real life. These were real people. Yes, these were real people. Francesca and Paolo.
Dante kind of writes, I suppose, sympathetically, somewhat, of how sad it is, you know, that through just an act of love, they would be thrown about hell in this hurricane as punishment for being swept off their feet in life, you know. And it is a really, really beautifully written canto. There's these gorgeous lines. It's love that absolves none beloved from loving. Love that in gentle hearts kindles quickly. There's these beautiful sort of reflections on it. And I suppose the poet, or I suppose the character that of the poet is saying how sad this is. But the song just tries to imagine Francesca is not repenting and does not lament, and nor does Paolo.
Joe listens to their story, and though they are condemned to an eternity of torment, it was worth it in their eyes, because they're together.
Now that it's done, there's not one thing that I would change. My life was a storm since I was born. How could I fear any hurricane? If someone asked me at the end, I'd tell them put me back in it. And I would do it again. If I could hold you for a minute. And I'd go through it again.
I was also trying to give a voice to Paolo in that song, and just saying, look, I would do this 1,000 times. I did this 1,000,000 times. There's no life in which I make any other choice.
I would still be someplace that could find it, turning it anywhere. If I could hold you for a
not the most romantic thing you've ever heard in your gosh damn life? I mean, seriously, this guy, from the perspective of this song, this guy is condemned to eternal punishment. He's forever stuck in Hurricane Katrina, basically. Like that is his life now. That is his eternity forever. But does he care? No, because he's with the woman he loves. He's with the woman he didn't get to even be with in real life. And yeah, this is hell. This is hell, and it's, you know, hell is hell. But it's just so freaking romantic.
Love that exempts no one from being loved seized me. Love has brought us to one death. There is no greater sorrow than to remember a happy time when you are in misery.
If I hear the squall, allow the ground to find its brutal way to me.
I carry in once again switches over to the perspective of Joe. Again, remember, this is just all me interpreting it this way. Andrew has completely said that this album doesn't have a narrative, except that he accidentally put one in there because he's a storyteller, he's an artist, he can't help himself. He didn't even realize he was doing it. After being so moved by the devotion of Paolo, he recalls his own devotion to Beatrice, the elation and the almost naive optimism that came from the start of a relationship. And Hosier, the closeted little English major that he is, relates this to the myth of Icarus.
This next song is taken off the new album, and it's kind of inspired a little bit in a playful way by the myth of Icarus. So, you know, it just imagines, I suppose, when that unfortunate boy woke up dead, as we say, that he was in such denial, that the experience of falling was so wonderful. That he was in complete denial that he could have died.
And though I burn, how could I fall when I am lifted by every word you say to me?
Icarus is often used as a metaphor for getting ahead of yourself, you know, being blinded by ambition, oh, he flew too close to the sun. And it's a very common metaphor in music.
When the wild winds around you, Icarus is flying too close to the sun. There's the sun on your way, like an eagle. Clouds straight ahead, turning flying.
But Andrew finds new ways to reform the idiom in a way that's much more impactful and a bit more universal. There's an ethereal feeling to the music of this track, mirroring the almost dreamlike phase of infatuation. But there's also this level of sorrow and grief that's infused into the melody because this is looking back on something.
Leave it now, I am skybound. If you need to, darling, lean your weight to me.
This track references our Beatrice, calling her the Atlas of the relationship. Atlas, of course, being the Titan who is forever cursed to hold up the sky.
You have me floating like a feather on the sea, while you're as heavy as the world that was holding up the ground. But I can see that all along, love, it was you all the way down.
This implies that through their relationship, Beatrice was the support system. She was picking up a lot of Joe's slack in the relationship while he chased his ambitions, and through it all, he never noticed that she was suffering because of it. And he asks her to please, when this all inevitably ends, don't leave me because you will be all I have left.
I do not have wings, love, I never will. Soaring over the world, you are carrying. If these heights should bring my fall, let me be your own. I carrying. If I should fall on that day, I only pray, don't fall away from me.
Your city, which is so full of envy that it overflows on all sides, once held a serene life for me as well, and for my sin of gluttony, as you see, I am forever battered by this rain. And I am not the only one, for everyone here suffers the same penalty for the same sin.
In Dante's version of hell, Cerberus, yes, that Cerberus, mauls you forever if you commit the sin of gluttony.
It's called a cruel irony.
Now, gluttony to me has always confused me as a sin. Not that I think it's okay to overindulge in something. I mean, if you look at the vignette portion of my Clancy video, I don't. But because to me, greed and gluttony are kind of the same thing. And that's also what confuses me about the placement of Eat Your Young. But whatever, it's not my concept album, it's Andrew's. It's not, I didn't write it.
This idea of where children become the ground for culture war for adults to use as pawns in culture wars, especially when it comes to arms dealing. Another school shooting, and then another debate about gun rights, etc. It's something that's quite alien to me, coming from the place in the world that I am. And I wanted the voice in the song to be that voice of power that shrugs off any responsibility to any sort of future that anybody has.
I'm starving, darling. Let me put my lips to something. Let me wrap my teeth around the world. Start carving, darling. I wanna smell the dinner cooking. I wanna feel the edges start to burn.
There's a level of grotesque imagery to the words that call to mind the sort of cannibalistic nature that Andrew wants to invoke. Because while a lot of us seem to vary morally, it's generally pretty agreed upon that eating people is a no. So he uses this imagery, this phrasing, to give us more of a visceral reaction to something. The song also makes me think of the scene in Catching Fire when they're at the Capitol party and they're literally serving ipecac to the guests so that they can throw up and eat more.
There's a fun sort of mislead in those first few lines. There's something that is potentially lustful in those lines, or like literally about hunger. I found the lyrics so grotesque in a way that there's a dark humor to them as well. It feels like we're in a kind of a race to the bottom at times. What is the most I can extract out of something for the cheapest? The place where that ends up are the challenges that a lot of people are living with now and will be living with for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Come and get some. Scared of the children for a whole gun. Put in front of the table, second bombs and guns. Twinkling easy, let me eat your young.
You know that sort of BuzzFeed article thing of like 15 new, 15 things? It's always an uneven number. It's always 7 or it's always 15. So that's why it was 7. I wanted it to sort of nod to that 50 ways to leave your lover type thing. Adults and people who are not long for this world are playing with the lives of children and the futures of children for their own political ends. It's oftentimes children are the ground in which that culture war takes place.
The music video itself is also a metaphor for how society eats children, slowly stripping them away of their individuality, their dreams, from an early age, so that they can be perfect citizens and match the status quo. The woman becomes an object to stare at, the man becomes cannon fodder to those in power, and both force the same beliefs onto their child, slowly killing his spirit. But wouldn't it be quicker if you just...
On Judgment Day, those who squandered will have only empty fists, and those who hoarded will be left with only shaven heads. It is their hoarding and squandering that has put them in this state, for all the gold that is and ever has been can never buy these weary souls a single moment of peace.
Those who commit the sin of greed in Dante's hell are cursed to forever fight each other for nothing. You know, sometimes he has really good, like, poetic justice in his poem, but for the most part, I'm just like, I don't really see where you were going with that, my guy. I mean, like, Cerberus eating you sucks, but I feel like it would be more poetic if you were, like, forced to starve to death forever, but whatever. Might be a tad bit on the nose, I don't know. So, what does damage gets done have to do with greed?
Without change, two habits into my name. You'd end up in one when you'd stay. We had nowhere to go, and every desire for going there.
It's a nostalgic song for a simpler time where you had nothing, but you were happier, weren't you? Because you had each other, and Beatrice sings in this song along with our Joe.
I heard one, it's the comforts that make us feel numb. We go out with no way to get home, and we'd sleep on somebody's floor. Wake up feeling like a millionaire.
This was an age of innocence in their relationship, an age of having nothing but each other, indicated by this line.
Wish I'd known it was just our turns in blame for a world we had no power in. You and I had nothing to show but the best of the world in the palm of our hands and darling.
Yeah, I knew that there was a lot of light and shade on the record, for sure, and knew that it was going to be... I mean, part of the theme, or part of the idea of touching on these themes that are all kind of universal, like playing with this idea of circles, you know, that I knew that it was thematically going to be broad, but there's also, yeah, like you can't, to reckon with, it's like any experience of falling in love or parting ways or reflecting upon that after the fact or experiencing it in the moment. Nothing is ever perfectly good. No moment is ever, it's sort of every experience is alive with a multitude of things.
I haven't felt it since then. I don't know how the feeling ended, but I know being reckless and young is
there is some, they're so open that whatever is coming forth, whether something's coming into you, something is coming out of you, your heart is very, very open. It's a very vulnerable state, and you are at your rawest at times.
I just have to say, out of all the songs on this album, the song that my perspective changed on the most doing this video was Damage Gets Done. It's now one of my top 3 songs on the album. This is a great song. I can't even describe how good this song is. Like, you just have to listen to it. One time we knew what our love was when we had now.
I stood intent, unable to turn away, when I saw people covered with mud in that lagoon. They hit each other, not with just their hands, but with their heads, and with their breasts and their feet, tearing each other apart with their teeth. The good master said, "Son, you are now seeing the souls of those who are overcome with anger."
Not gonna lie, this was a hard one because the circle of hell for wrath is for the hateful. You know, Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you." This is for people who didn't listen to that. But it was hard to figure out how this song specifically fits into this circle.
Quietly, it slips through your fingers, love, falling from you, drop by drop.
But when you look at it from the perspective of a failed relationship, it actually fits pretty well. This is the part of Beatrice and Joe's relationship where they started to become a little resentful of one another. And Andrew points out that it's easier to feel the absence of love more than the presence of it.
You only feel it when it's lost. Getting through still has a cost.
Beatrice and Joe's relationship started faltering thanks to the foreshadowing in Damage Gets Done. We know why. Life gets in the way. Fame, success, loss, financial problems. Life just has a way of making the sweet things go sour.
You and I burned out our steam, chasing someone else's dream. How can something be so much heavier, but so much less than what it seems?
And because of this, they started feeling resentful towards one another. Maybe even hateful.
Darling, we sacrificed, we gave our time to something undefined. This phantom light sharpens like an image, but it sharpens like a knife.
Inferno depicts the prisoners of the fifth circle to be drowning in the river Styx, as Dante is ferried across it by Charon. I don't know how you say that guy's name, but he's not real, who cares? And if this whole thing was like a visual experience, I could just imagine Joe sitting on the boat as they're ferried across the river Styx just singing this song. I don't know why I'm just seeing that in my head so clearly. All the while there's just souls just drowning beneath him. Dante's Inferno is like a horror story. That's the only way I can really describe it. It's just a huge bummer of a Bible fan fiction.
Only feel it getting through still has its cost. Quietly, it slips through your fingers, love, falling from you, drop by drop.
My master, who are those people lying in those tombs who scream their miserable cries? And he said to me, here are the heretics with their disciples of all sects. Then there arose from the same grave, uncovered down to his chin, a shadow at his side. He gazed around me, as if hopeful that he would see someone else there with me. But after his suspicion was wrong, he began to cry and said to me, "Where is my son? And why is he not with you? Is he not still alive? Does he not still carry the light of life in his eyes?" When he became aware of my delay in answering, for I had not answered his question, he fell. And I did not see him again. Remember the words that were spoken against you, and listen to this. When you are finally standing in the sweet glow of her whose beauteous eyes behold all things, from her you will learn the meaning of your life.
A 2-ton weight around my chest feels like you just dropped a 20-story height. If there was anyone to ever get through this life with their hearts still intact, they didn't do it right.
Wow, you can't see that title card. All Things End is still in the circle of heresy and talks about the actual end of Joe's relationship with Beatrice. How there was a conversation and it didn't end well, but it was inevitable.
I have never known a silence like the one falling here. Never watched my future darken in a single tear.
So what does that have to do with heresy? You got me.
In all things in, all that we intend, exploding sin, or slips right through our hand.
So maybe the meaning of it is a bit deeper than we realize, because with the song's subject matter and its place in the narrative, it's a bit of a contradiction. In Christianity, death isn't the end. It's like a graduation into something different. And the gates of hell literally emphasize that this is forever. So the thought of finality and something ending is a bit heretical in the Christian point of view.
Just knowing that everything will end should not change our plan when we begin again.
But also taken in the context of Joe and Beatrice's relationship, the whole song kind of reads like a lie. It sounds like Joe is trying to convince himself that this is for the best, even though he probably doesn't really think that. But again, this is just an interpretation of the song. I did my best with this one.
And all things end, all that we
A joy hard learned in winter was the warming of the bed. You'd shake for minutes there, then move your legs. Wrap the blanket over you, then keep your head within. Let your breath heat the air until you'd feel it getting thin. Ishkora, the feel of coldness only water brings. There are some things that no one teaches you, love. They come natural as a dream. You didn't know that you were in. Darling, all my dreaming is only put to shame. And darling, all my dreaming has only been given a name. But it came easy, darling, as natural as another leg around you in the bed frame. In summer's heat I learned to dread the coming of the night, the awful things we do to make the head go quiet. You press your body to the concrete when you were small. The rains of winter seem to never leave the walls. Ishkora, the feel of coldness only water brings. There are some things that no one teaches you. That God in His awful wisdom first programs in. Darling, all my dreaming is only put to shame. And darling, all my dreaming has only been given a name. It happened easy, darling, as natural as another leg around you in the bed. I wish I could say that the river of my arms have found the ocean. I wish I could say the cold lake water of my heart Christ, it's boiling over. But it happened easy, darling, as natural as another leg around you in the bed frame.
Hello, I am here at Hill Crane Castle, home of the first ever Dunkin' Donuts. Because of centuries of erosion and the elements, it's now too small. So now they just sell lottery tickets out of it. And that is, that's what you see here today.
Within the first circle are the violent, but since violence comes in three forms, the punishment is divided into three circles. Violence to God, to ourselves, and to our neighbors. So homicides, and those who strike with malice, and those who plunder and destroy, are all in the first round.
The seventh circle is given to those who commit acts of violence. And Butchered Tongue almost reads as a sequel to Eat Your Young, or even the alternate perspective of that song, The Victims of Greed.
As a child, it was the place names. Singing at me is the first thing. How the mouth must be employed in every corner of itself.
The greedy, the warmongering, the bloodthirsty leave victims in their wake, and in the most extreme and horrible version of this, erase entire cultures and civilizations.
To say Apalachicola or Hushpekina like Guibara, a promise softly sung of somewhere else.
The first two words that Andrew references in the song are places in the United States named after Native American words and tribes that don't even live there anymore. Apalachicola means the people on the other side of the river, and Hushpekina means flowers are abundant in Choctaw. These cultures and peoples have been reduced to mere fractions of what they once were because of European colonization and United States forced relocation. But Guibara hits a bit closer to home for Andrew. It's from a poem by Seamus Heaney, which refers to the reclaiming of Irish culture and heritage back from British erasure, to the point where even their language was almost lost. Literally, a butchered tongue.
And as a young man, blessed to pass so many road signs, and have my foreign ear made fresh again, on each unlikely sound, but feel at home here in a music that few still understand. A butchered tongue still singing here above the ground.
What an artist feels that they want to write about, whether that's dancing or just looking good or just feeling good about yourself, or you want to write about atrocity, or you want to write about poverty, or you want to write about the difficulties of your day-to-day or the joys of your day-to-day, at least be honest about it.
The ears were chopped from young men. If the pitch cap didn't kill them, they are buried without scalp in the shattered bedrock of our home. You may never know your fortune until the distance has been shown between what is lost forever and what can still be known.
Now, this specifically is a reference to the Wexford Rebellion that happened in 1798, where the Irish rebelled against the British Crown. British forces would cut off ears as punishment, and a pitch cap is probably something I shouldn't talk about on a family-friendly channel, but Google it if you have a strong stomach. So Andrew relates his home's own dark history to the one he sees all over when he travels, when he sees towns and cities named in languages the people don't even speak anymore. Now, this is not an issue that's recent to the last century, or even the last millennium. As long as humans have formed societies, we've tried to annihilate one another. The Ottomans, the Axis powers, the Mongols, the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish conquistadors, and despite what everyone keeps trying to tell you, it is not just limited to one specific culture. There's the Rwandan genocide, the Bosnian genocide, the Armenian genocide, the Uyghurs in China, the Troubles, apartheid. It's everywhere. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim to know anything about this incredibly complex and dark issue, more than just what you can learn in a history class. Because I'm a white American, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know anything about what my Polish and my Irish ancestors went through when they came to America. Back when America was so racist, they were racist against other white people. So I will just let Andrew's words, beautiful and poetic as they are, close out this segment of the video.
So far from home to have a stranger call you darling, and have your guarded heart be lifted like a child up by the hand in some town that just means home to them, with no translator left to sound. A butchered tongue still singing here above the ground.
I stood as a friar who was hearing the confession of an assassin, and he cried out, "Have you already arrived here? Do you stand there already, Boniface? The record lied to me by many years. Are you satiated with your wealth so soon, for which you did not fear to take from the church by fraud in order to work your woe?"
Come here to me, I wish I was a mayfly on the river Tay. I'd fit all my joys and my pleasures in one perfect day. I wish I was the sunlight, just sitting on the Mississippi. I'd settle for a shopping trolley in the Liffey.
Irony is the fact that this song exists in the circle of fraud and is the most commonly misinterpreted as a sweet, sappy love song.
And it's sad I'd swap my body for a body of water. Worry the cliffside top as a wave crashing over. I'd lower the world in a flood, or better yet, I'd cause a drought. If I was a riptide, I wouldn't take you out.
This is a song of pettiness, of being so angry that you'd write a song telling someone to piss off in 1,000 different ways.
I don't wanna be anything like this at all. But I would do everything if you hear me say.
Only Andrew Hosier Byrne. This is, of course, the post-breakup era of Beatrice and Joe's relationship. Now, if you interpret this album as one whole narrative, you can see that Beatrice was most likely the person who ripped off the Band-Aid and left Joe, especially with the absolute vitriol that this song portrays.
Dante wasn't an occupier of hell. He wasn't like one of its population. He was he was a witness to it. So he walked through it. It's something that's really interesting about that poem. Everybody who sees him remarks that his feet, he walks on ground where earth hasn't been disturbed for centuries, in fact millennia.
Sometimes it returns like rain that you slept through, that washed off the world. The streets looking brand new. I will not be great, but I'm grateful to get through. The feeling came late. I'm still glad I met you.
So are you taking his role and in terms as it relates to like you're kind of him walking through society?
No.
And taking notes?
No. The songs are just themes, you know. They're just arranged into themes. There's little nods, but it's roughly inspired. It's not like there's no other sort of parallels I would draw to that.
Sometimes I like you choose what you're doing, but it comes to naught when I look back through it.
In that moment when you're bringing that to life in a song, is that in any way what you're going through in life, or is it purely inspired by the poem?
I think that the poem, using the poem reference is a device in order to actually kind of put, if I'm being honest, to distance myself from it, but it starts from a personal place.
The speed that you move, the screech of the cars, the creature still moving, it's floating in your arms, the fear in its eyes,
there's some of the stuff in the lyrics, yeah, that it starts from a personal place. I wrote that for somebody, before I brought it forward as like to a producer. But I think the poem offers it a second layer. It lives this other life, a secret message that I wrote from myself to somebody else.
I'm afraid we'll always be trapped within an abstract from a moment of my life. See how it shines. See how it shines.
Now, I said, I don't care if you speak or not, you accursed traitor. For I will report your shame when I spread the news of finding you here.
So unknown, I suppose, where the title comes from, as in the, as an unknown number, the expression to the nth degree or for the nth time. It's like an unknown but large number, and I suppose the song sort of reflects upon, I guess, heartbreak or having your heart broken by somebody you trusted. And I suppose the joke in that is also is like something that can happen a lot of times to you, that you kind of can sometimes think you've learned from, and then it happens again.
Funny how true colors shine in darkness and in secrecy. If there were scarlet flags, they washed out in the mind of me. Where a blinding light shone on you every night, on either side of my sleep, where you were held frozen like an angel to me.
So yes, and then also just it sort of recalls ninth, so it is the ninth circle, and which is circle of treachery.
You know I'm good at my own. Shalala, baby, you know it's more than being unknown. So much of the living love is the being unknown.
What I love about I suppose the production is there's a lot of negative space in the production. There's a lot of empty space. There's a great sort of coldness to it, and that's something I wanted to capture in the song. To give you a picture of how Dante imagined the ninth circle, that Satan is not, or Beelzebub, or whatever you want to call him, that he's not so much the king of hell as he is. It's number one and primary first prisoner. He's trapped up to his waist in ice, this enormous figure in hell that they end up climbing. But as he beats his wings to try and get out of that ice, he creates this freezing wind which only creates more ice. He's chewing on the great traitors of history. So Judas is in one of his mouths. Is it Brutus? One of Caesar's traitors is in another mouth, etc.
You called me angel for the first time, my heart leapt from me. Your smile, now I can see its pieces still stuck in your teeth. And what's left of it, I listen to it tick. Every tedious beat, going unknown, is that the angel to me?
So that imagery of things being stuck in the teeth of this fallen angel, I was kind of just exploring that. So I mean, the song sort of throws away the old premise of angelhood, I suppose, but none of us are. We're all going to break somebody's heart or betray somebody or hurt somebody. So yeah, it's a song I have a lot of love for. There's so much, there's kind of a minimalist approach to it, which I think always, in that empty space, there's something else happening.
Of the good You know I'm good at my own. She'll love baby, you know it's more than being unknown. And there are some people, love, who are better unknown.
The guide and I walked along that hidden road to return to the bright world outside. And without stopping to rest, we climbed up. Until I saw through a small, round opening some of the beautiful things that heaven holds. Then we climbed out and looked up at the stars.
One bright morning changes all things, soft and easy as you're breathing. You wake, your eyes open at first 1,000 miles away, but turn into the silver bullet point blank range. And I can scarce believe what I'm believing in. Could this be how every day begins? The sky sets to burn, the gold in the rest, the color in red. You fill in my cup, the sun coming out. Like I lived my whole life before the first light.